From the old days of civilization, people paid special attention and attributed mystic powers to glass, often believing its transparency was due to magic and the supernatural. Glass also became an unquestionable symbol of beauty, and scientists, alchemists and artists for centuries sought a formula to perfect it. The process of making glass is also amazing. A liquid substance formed with the power of the air hardens rapidly, preserving its shape. Much has changed in the several hundred years tradition of seeking new methods of production of artistic glass, but the place which was crucial to its history was the manufactory in the Italian island Murano. The production of the famous Venetian glass originated right there. As early as in the 16th century, Venetian artisans achieved proficiency in permeating glass with colors. Whilst dyeing the clear matter, they never disturbed its transparency. Throughout the ages, having a monopoly on making glass of the highest quality, they developed many original techniques of production, such as crystal, enamel glass, glass with strips of gold, colored glass and milk glass. What's interesting, those historical methods of making glass are used till today. The whole process, however, is very complex. At first, silica needs to be melted at a high temperature, and then, gradually cooling, the mass is given the desired shape. Coloring requires the knowledge of chemistry. For instance, to obtain ruby glass, an appropriate quality of gold solution must be used. The ruby glass collection was brought to Wilanów in the 19th century, and 2 items may have been purchased by Stanisław Kostka-Potocki himself to increase the affluence of the recently opened museum. Products of that type were a luxury, and only the wealthiest could afford ordering them. It is noteworthy those products instantly lost their practical function and became purely visual objects, filling lavish palace interiors. The distinctive shape of the Wilanów bottle resembles those of pilgrim bottles made as early as in the Middle Ages. The ruby glass collection was brought to Wilanów in the 19th century. Possibly 2/3 were purchased by Stanisław Kostka-Potocki himself to increase the affluence of the recently opened museum. Deciphering the letter in the silver ornament allows to identify the workshop of the author Albrecht Biller. He was an unquestionable goldsmith master, and a proof of his perfection is the precisely polished setting, complemented with the acanthus leaf motif. Let's talk about artistic glass today, or not artistic glass itself, but rather about creating glass by Polish artists, which has constituted the Polish school of contemporary glass. I have the pleasure of talking to Professor Zbigniew Horbowy, in my opinion the most outstanding artist of the Polish school of glass, which had and still has a unique impact on society. Professor, I would like to talk to you on certain references and analogies of contemporary glass to historical glass. I'm not going to refer to it as Baroque or Rococo glass, but to historical glass in general. Please tell me, does a contemporary artist working the difficult matter that glass is often refer to historical glasses? We seem to be on the path of being in touch in art as general, of certain values which have for years increased. Some vanish. That's a normal creative sequence. Most certainly, historical glass had an extraordinary impact on contemporary art. You have to make a distinction here in terms of production. Anything that was mass-produced was functional glass. Can a wine glass be a work of art? Of course it can. So we have a different situation here. But getting back to your question, if there was a connection, certainly there was. First of all, in the proportions. Each wine glass has a bowl, a stem and a base. Every other product has its function, which can have varied shapes, different in Baroque than they are now. Ancient consumers valued different decorative qualities than those living now. The automatic production of today has imposed its rules, and it's unthinkable to decorate glass with gold or silver elements, although there are workshops where those things are used, but based on contemporary criteria of art. So the connection does exist. I can tell you from my own experience that I was inspired by very old glass which I liked. Roman glass, the glass from that period, devoid of gold, devoid of such ornaments. They emanated simplicity. Droplets of air, reproved throughout the ages, were my success. We returned to the roots of glass. If it enjoyed some or even much popularity, it was because of that. We intentionally referred to ancient glass. Baroque or later, Rococo glass was affected by trends in fine arts, in painting, graphics. The same goes for furniture. Glass, porcelain, Meissen porcelain will always remain that of Meissen, and it had better never change. So I think we had a good period in Polish glass, as we had lots of glassworks. Later changes limited their number, but not only changes are to blame. Economic conditions prevailed. First of all, raw materials and gas, those two things. Gas is very expensive today, and glassworks have to use it. Other substances we need, like sand, are also very expensive. But the automatic production of functional glass developed rapidly. Nowadays, machines make glass unattainable to manual work. Whilst preserving certain granted functions, the products have the proportions and quality often exceeding manual work potential. Manual work is something related to handicraft. We often underestimate handicraft in Poland. Without handicraft, frankly speaking, though many colleagues may argue, without handicraft there is no art. It is hard to create a masterpiece without a technique. In the past years, centuries, glass was made by masters, who were both craftsmen and artists. I had the pleasure to work with such people. I was the so-called artist, and they were the craftsmen, but it didn't matter to me and to them. Our cooperation was marvelous. But an artist is necessary. Certainly. Someone has to originate the shape. What was the specificity of the glass, or glasses, by Zbigniew Horbowy, in view of the glass which existed in Poland in 1960s and 1970s? I graduated, and I was feather-headed and quick-tempered. When I went to the glassworks, I was totally lost. It was a large plant. There were 4 12 crucible furnaces. Fire and glass. Fascinating. I was shocked by that experience. It also taught me humility towards the material and the people who handle it. I had learned certain things at the university, but not until I came to the glassworks in Szczytna did I get the practice, the glass-making craft. That was long ago. There were many glassworkers from Romania. They spoke with a lovely soft accent. They often didn't know what I wanted, but they were always cheerful. "Glass is bad today," they said. "Come tomorrow." Those were stories which brought us closer together. Work brings good experts closer. I do not take all the credit. There were those wonderful glassworkers and often accidental technologists, technicians. They sat in the back, they weighed and measured, added something. They were real masters, many of them. I got inspired by one basic principle. That the same method, the same technology, the same material may give products of unique features in short-run production. Those are the most valuable products. We managed to achieve that. Our glass was so popular because it was so different. What does its individuality consist in? In color, form, and workmanship. It was something entirely different. It was a beautiful manual work in glass. We used old techniques. Here is the connection with ancient glass. I oftentimes showed them photos of old glass, from Murano in particular, lovely Baroque wine glasses with various decorations attached. We were unable to do it. We couldn't. But the idea emerged in a different form, a different shape. I believe we even developed our own glass style. At that time, all ideas belonged to everybody. Anybody could copy us. There was no patent protection, and there were no regulations. But the work was interesting. It apparently had to be this way. Later it turned out we had over 30 different colors. Glassworkers were amazed to hear that. We rediscovered some of the colors. The worst thing at that time was the lack of information from other countries and other fields. I did the so-called inventions, which had existed for 100 years. That's how it was. You cannot learn everything at school. You have to let good glassworkers teach you. 3 workers and a lady to hold the form and another to carry it back. You have to decide in the blink of an eye. In a moment, the material hardens and cracks in a few seconds. It's not for undecided people. It either works or it doesn't. I would like to ask you about the color you speak so much about. We know that historical glass, particularly the one produced in Murano, until today, in Venice or Augsburg, was produced using noble metals to dye the product. How does it possibly relate to contemporary dyestuffs? Does it look like 200 or 300 years ago? Or is a new technology of dyeing glass being created? They based, especially in ruby glass, on gold compounds. We didn't have the gold. Some small shops in Murano most likely still use gold. It gives perfect red. So you can make a little plate or something, but gold has been replaced by other compounds. We based our technology on cadmium and selenium. In combination with other oxides of cobalt, nickel, copper. In order to obtain colorless glass, you have to dye it first, since naturally it is light green, from the ferric oxide present in the sand. Old glass contained the natural green as well, but certain noble ingredients were added to obtain beautiful colors. That's why ancient glass was valued as high as gold. What made it were the material, great workmanship, and a concept. You must have a concept, workmanship, and technology to get a product. These days we also need marketing to persuade people it's nice. That's how it looks. Thank you very much. Thank you.